So let's talk about Tesla for a minute. The company is sitting on a truly massive $1.5 trillion valuation. But, it makes you wonder, what exactly happens when sky-high market expectations collide with grounded, data-heavy reality? Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we are unpacking a really fascinating timeline mismatch. We're going to be looking at a highly critical new short seller report and blending that with some fresh consumer pricing data. Basically, we're examining a situation where Wall Street's expectations and the on-the-ground operational metrics seem to be living in two completely different time zones. Okay, to really dive into this, we need to establish our primary source today. It's a highly detailed financial report from McFarlane Research. Now, they hold a short position on Tesla, which just means they are actively betting against the stock. They definitely have a financial incentive to dig deep and find the flaws. And their entire thesis? It rests on one profound idea. There is a massive disconnect between narrative and reality. They argue the market is pricing in the immediate success of these unproven technologies, while the actual underlying fundamentals suggest those milestones are years, maybe even decades away. To unpack all this without getting lost in the weeds, here is our roadmap for today. We'll hit 1. The trillion-dollar gap. 2. Core auto market struggles. 3. The robo-taxi reality check. 4. The AI and robotics promise. And 5. The looming cash crunch. Let's jump right into section 1. The trillion-dollar gap. The big takeaway here is that Tesla isn't just priced for success. McFarlane argues it is priced for absolute, near-perfect execution. Right now, the stock is trading at a staggering 376 times earnings. For the market to justify a number like that, it's essentially assuming that multiple, totally unproven business lines are going to become overnight massive hits. To put that into perspective, the report notes that roughly $1.2 trillion of this implied value is tied directly to products, specifically robotaxis and humanoid robots, that have generated absolutely zero disclosed revenue so far. It is a massive, massive bet on a future that just hasn't arrived yet. Which brings us to section 2, core auto market struggles. Because honestly, to fund an AI future, you really need a strong present. Think of the core automotive business as the engine that has to pay for the AI rocket. But, according to this report, the very foundation of Tesla's empire is showing some pretty serious cracks. Earnings per share, they've collapsed by 75% since 2023. And on top of that, total revenue actually fell last year for the very first time since their IPO. So why does this matter? Well, because the auto sales that are supposed to pay for all these massive factory build-outs and AI research programs, they're shrinking. And they're shrinking at the exact moment the company's capital needs are highest. Just to give you a sense of the scale of this market share erosion, in the US, Tesla's dominance has nearly halved. They went from a commanding 79% back in 2020 down to an estimated 46% for 2025. And it's practically the exact same story in Europe, dropping from 18% down to 9%. The report points out that their aging product lineups are really struggling against some fierce global competition. Most notably, competitors like BYD are actually outselling Tesla globally now, which puts immense pressure on the revenue streams they desperately need. All right, moving on to section 3, the robo-taxi reality check. Let's pivot away from Wall Street for a second and look at the actual consumer experience. Recent data from PCMag, which pulled from a huge sample size of over 94,000 rides, shows a really fascinating dynamic. On price alone, Tesla is absolutely dominating. Averaging just $8.17 a ride, it deeply undercuts Lyft and Uber, and it's less than half the cost of a Waymo, which comes in at nearly $20. So strictly looking at cost to the consumer, Tesla holds a massive competitive advantage. But, there's always a catch, right? That ultra-low price comes with a major trade-off in convenience. To get that cheap ride, consumers are waiting an average of over 15 minutes. That's 10 whole minutes longer than a Waymo, and way longer than a standard Uber. It really raises a huge question for mass adoption. Are everyday users actually going to accept steep friction and long wait times just to save a few bucks? Time is money. And right now, the data suggests that while the ride itself is cheap, the wait is incredibly costly for the consumer experience. And here is a truly surprising demographic twist from that same PCMag data. They uncovered a massive gender divide in brand preference. 56% of men said they prefer Tesla robotaxis, compared to just 35% of women. It's a really unique window into how different segments of the public perceive these emerging brands. Plus, it highlights a pretty significant marketing hurdle if the ultimate goal is ubiquitous, widespread adoption across everyone. Bringing it back to McFarlane's critical analysis, though, the underlying safety data presents a giant hurdle. The report states that Tesla's Austin fleet experiences a crash roughly every 57,000 miles. Now, to operate a profitable, unsupervised commercial fleet, the insurance threshold sits around 200,000 miles. That means Tesla's fleet is crashing roughly 3.5 times too often to meet commercial viability standards. And keep in mind, that's with human safety monitors still sitting right there in the cars. For McFarlane, the safety gap is a giant roadblock to ever achieving profitable unit economics. Okay, let's head into Section 4, the AI and robotics promise. McFarlane calls out a really stark expectation versus reality gap for the Optimus robot. Remember the original promise? 10,000 fully autonomous units built by 2025? Well, the reality today, according to the short report, is just a few hundred units. And more importantly, McFarlane claims that the highly publicized public demonstrations have operated a bit like the Wizard of Oz, basically relying heavily on hidden human teleoperation from the sidelines rather than showcasing true, independent artificial intelligence. So the argument here is that the market is assigning a staggering $1.2 trillion in value to what is essentially still an R&D project. The report points out Optimus has absolutely zero external customers right now. It's also drastically missing its manufacturing cost targets, coming in at $50,000 to $100,000 a unit instead of the promised $20,000 to $30,000. Add in a supply chain that's highly vulnerable to Chinese export restrictions on rare earth magnets, and McFarlane argues this massive slice of Tesla's valuation is incredibly fragile. Which brings us to our final pillar, Section 5, the looming cash crunch. Because let's face it, all of these ambitious projects require cash, a lot of it, and Tesla is entering its most aggressive spending cycle in history. We are talking over $20 billion in planned capital expenditures for 2026 alone, building out 6 new factories for lithium refining, cybercabs, and Optimus. The McFarlane report models that this massive spending cliff, colliding head-on with those shrinking auto revenues we talked about, will drive free cash flow deeply negative, potentially to the tune of $7 to $8 billion. They might literally be forced into a position where they have to seek billions in outside bank financing just to keep the lights on. And compounding all this immense financial pressure is what the short report identifies as severe leadership instability. At the precise moment that capital needs are peaking and flawless execution on AI is absolutely critical, top talent is walking out the door. We've seen recent high-profile departures like the head of Autopilot, the VP of Engineering, the CFO, and the head of the Optimus program. When the very architects of the future are leaving en masse, it naturally raises some serious questions about the company's ability to execute on these trillion-dollar promises. Because of this perfect storm, McFarlane warns of upcoming hard catalysts arriving in early 2026. These are strict, unavoidable dates where the optimistic narrative is going to hit a regulatory brick wall. You've got mandatory safety data submissions to the NHTSA in March, Q1 earnings revealing the true cash burn in April, and the opening of Texas EV permits in May. That last one is absolutely crucial because it's going to force Tesla to legally prove its driverless software is actually ready for public roads. So, we'll leave you with this final thought based on everything we've covered today. The McFarlane report clearly paints a picture of a company priced for absolute perfection while deeply struggling with core execution. But actually, we have to remember, Tesla and its CEO have a legendary history of defying intense skepticism and proving the doubters wrong. So what do you think? Will Tesla pull off another unprecedented engineering miracle to justify this massive timeline mismatch? Or are we standing on the brink of a historic market correction? The clock is definitely ticking toward 2026, and the data will soon give us our answer.